So I recently shared how to figure out what times to post with your audience, but how do you know what to post? Well, as we've seen from this very digitally charged election cycle, social media is something that everyone watches, even if you think they're not watching. So in order to keep an authentic profile, you should make sure that you're not deleting posts and that you're saying exactly what you mean. So how do you do that? It's very hard because in a tweet, everything can be, people can misunderstand a tweet. It's 140 characters. You can sometimes say something a little too charged and share before you're ready. And you can also sometimes say something that maybe isn't on brand for you. So how do you determine what you should be sharing, especially when it comes to topics that are more charged? I think that it's important for you to understand what your brand is before you determine this. So how do you determine what your brand is? Well, I've talked about this many times, there's a whole system to figuring out who you are, what your content buckets are, what topics you will talk about, what topics you won't, what topics will stem from those main topics to be your secondary topics. But what about things that you've never thought of? Years ago, I used to advise that journalists specifically, and content creators kind of fall into that, anyone who was sharing information and expecting it to be taken as an expert source or an expert opinion or an expert article, I felt that you shouldn't talk about politics. And now, as my career has evolved and as the world has evolved, I believe that if there is something that is being said in a political arena or in a political debate or in a political election cycle, and it has to do with your primary, secondary, or tertiary brand content types, I think that you can have a say. And I think that having a say actually brings another level of authenticity to your brand. Now, the caveat to that is that you have to make sure that when you talk about it, you speak from a place of intelligence and from a place of honesty, and that you are authentic in your approach. I think that a lot of times the best ways to do this are to ask questions. So to say to your audience, what do you think about that? Without any judgment or without any of your own opinion. I think it's also important to sometimes, if you're a content creator, to expose your media bias. So I have a lot of friends in journalism, and we're talking about this a lot because it is important to realize that every journalist, every storyteller, every content creator has a lens through which they see the world. And if you understand their lens, then you have a better grasp on why they're using the words they use in their stories and why they're writing what they're writing. One thing that Patchcom did really well, and I don't have many great things to say about what they did because I think that there were so many optimizations that could have been made, but one thing I think they did really well was that they had us fill out a questionnaire that asked us, local reporters, to say what we voted for and who we voted for in the last election. And it was 2010 when I was working there, so I actually was able to share who I had voted for in the first time I was ever able to vote, which was an incredible experience. And I think for every woman, it's something that you have to really go out there and do, because women before us fought so hard for us to have that simple right to go and have our voice heard. And I had written this down, and it asked the questionnaire, which I don't even know if it still exists online, but it basically asked you to tell a little bit about why you voted for that. So to give your story behind the overall answer. And I felt like that, still to this day, I feel that that gives you, the reader, a good sense of what my values are and how I work to overcome them in articles that are not opinion-based. Now I'm lucky. I don't really write journalism articles anymore. I get to write tutorials and tips, and I get to have a very strong opinion. But for those of us who are writing stories that are not opinion-focused, we need to make sure that we're upfront. So I think that I think any expert can talk about politics as long as you do it the right way. So to go back to what you should post and when you should post it, download my cadence recommendation on my website. It's a freebie to help you figure out how many times a day and at what times you should post your very well thought out posts. I hope you have a great day, and I hope this was helpful. Bye!